Today is Thursday, July 19th, 6:50 p.m. And I'm just now embarking on a walk that I hope truly lives up to the Japanese legacy that I had not so long ago. Some rush hour traffic to my right. Lots of hustle and bustle. Everyone's trying to get out of the city. As it gets closer to Friday, it's always worse. And I've been on a few walks since coming back to America, but never any walks that were really as epic as the walk that I would do, almost daily when I lived in Japan. I hope not to be home until 10 o'clock or so tonight. It's hard to focus. Before I was leaving, though, I was thinking about this walk and thinking about how today I've kind of felt off a little bit, not so happy in my mind and my heart. Before I was leaving, I was thinking about how Albert Einstein used to go on walks, and I'd heard that he would do that, and I don't know what he would think about, if he would think about personal problems, or if he would just think about math. I doubt he thought about math the whole time, but maybe he did. And I heard that he would go into the Alps and he would walk around in there, and I heard that he walked across the Alps at one point when he was younger, and I'm not sure if that's true. It seems like if he had crossed the Alps by himself as a young man, he would be more known for that among the other things that he is known for. So I'm not sure about that. I don't know what he was doing when he would go out, but I definitely know the quality, I know the value of a walk. And so that's what I'm doing, trying to clear my head a little bit. I feel like I've been kind of swimming in thoughts recently. More so just really today. I feel like I'm sort of in between interests right now. Don't have anything to really captivate and grab my attention. I could go to the observatory today and, damn, stupid cars. Could go look at the stars, which I may still do, but I'd have to do that in the next 2 hours. I'd have to decide whether or not to do that, and I don't feel a huge draw to doing that. I feel more content to go on this walk and really just enjoy it. It's been so long since I've made a clip now. I don't even remember the last one I made, what the date was, or what I was thinking or doing. I still have yet to finish the Virginia series, the DC series, of no real fault of my own. I'm really just waiting until I can buy a new computer, because I really have gotten to the point now where my computer is so utterly broken that it's beyond my ability to fix it or to even try to fix it. So it still intermittently turns off, and just no warning, no nothing. Sometimes I can use it for an hour or more, and sometimes I can't even get it to where it loads the operating system before it just shuts down. And then after that first shutdown that happens, it will just continue to shut down more and more after. And so I have yet to be able to put that series fully together. There's 2 episodes remaining from that series, and I'm holding out until August 10th or 11th to buy a new computer so that I can get it during the tax holiday and buy it without having to have the added taxes on, which is something I've never done before, but taking that tax holiday into consideration. But having had this job now at Whole Foods and all, and living on my own income, I definitely realize the value even more of saving that extra money. So I bet it's at least probably $50 on top of whatever the computer I would buy would end up being. And so as soon as I buy that, that'll be a great new tool for me to have. I'll be able to finish the Wilmington series, the Washington, D.C. series, kind of get back on track with other things. It'll probably inspire a little bit of writing, since the ease of typing will be much, much greater than how it is on my iPad. I've been using my iPad a lot recently. It's because I don't really have a computer anymore. And I really, really see the value in it now. I've been really negative and discouraging to other people when they've talked to me about, iPads, and if they should get a tablet, or if they should spend that same amount of money and try to just get a better PC computer or a laptop or something like that. And I've always tried to steer people away from the tablets and everything, mostly just the iPad, just because I feel like it has a severe lack of ability. Not really just because of it not having a CD drive or anything like that, but not being able to use Flash is frustrating, pretty crippling and debilitating for some features of the internet. For instance, I can't use my iPad to upload any episodes of Molt. I could probably use it to edit episodes of Molt, but even imagining how difficult that would be made because of the interface of the iPad makes me want to cringe. I mean, it's difficult enough just to select menus on websites, scroll down menus and make a selection, let alone imagining what it would be like just to use my fingers only to cut up tracks and insert clips. That seems pretty miserable. Pretty miserable. So it's been a great tool, and I've really been enjoying it. I'm actually carrying it with me right now on the chance that I might stop somewhere during this epic sojourn that I hope I have embarked upon, and hope that I will stay relatively dry during. I need to cross the street and go up a road soon. I'm getting close to a little bit of a rough part of town, and I don't want to have my concentration stolen because I'm worried about the people surrounding me. So I have to cross the street. Not yet. Get killed if I do right now. Anyway, so that's a little bit of an update as to why Molt has been sluggish, to say the least. In the interim, I have tried to make the Molt website a little bit more interactive and media-rich by including some of my old writings, which it was really fun to go through and find using the iPad, actually. That was a weird process that I figured out how to do fairly efficiently, but does not deserve to be talked about. I went through and I found all the writings I've made in the past 5 years or so, the bigger ones, the more monumental ones, the ones that are, at least 3 pages, which isn't saying much. Some of them are much longer than that, though. And I went and posted those onto the Molt website, just as sort of filler items that are still definitely items of interest for the meantime. And basically included almost everything that I found, with the exception of one, which was sort of a non-fiction account of Brittany and my trip to Portland that I had started writing shortly after coming back, mostly just because I would think I was missing the experience, and through writing about it I was able to somewhat relive it. But during that time, I guess that would have been the summer of 2009 or so, something else must have grabbed my attention, because I wrote 11 pages and I think got through most of the first week that we were out traveling through the United States, but something happened and I never finished. And I kept that one out just because it's got a lot of personal stuff. Not stuff that I'm not willing to share, but I'm not sure if Brittany would want me to post, especially because it might be even more weird now that we have broken up. How's it going? So that's another Molt update. I have a feeling I'm entering an area where lots of people are. Don't want to lose concentration. Let's see if I can cross. I think I've passed all of the attention stealers for the moment. And definitely have lost my train of thought pretty severely. I'll try to recapture it, talk about some stuff. Let's see. Today, like I said, swimming in thoughts. This morning, I had to work at 9:30. And, I like working earlier at Whole Foods because it means I can get out earlier and do things like this when the sun is still out, which always makes me immensely more happy and satisfied with my employment and what it calls for of me. But it's just amazing how draining, in a very certain aspect, 8 hours of working is. There's nothing particularly demanding about going in to work at Whole Foods, but it takes a certain kind of toll. It's just such menial work, such small potatoes, Just at the end of the day, it's just so empty being a cashier. And I'm not sure if that is something that's characteristic of how I feel about working in the service industry in general, because this is a similar feeling that I've had when I've had any of my jobs for a significant amount of time, with maybe the exception of working with art, although I'm pretty sure I got tired of that one too. Just this feeling of just, I don't know, you spend so much time doing something that you really just don't want to do. It just doesn't give you anything. And it's sad because I've gotten to the point now where working, I'm not really interested in the customers anymore. I was interested for months in asking them questions and figuring out things about them and trying to see how they were doing, trying to be like a good part of their day with our interaction and everything. But now it's just gotten so banal, so boring, so mundane. I just really don't care anymore. It's not the right format, not the right forum or place to be meeting people. Not in a meaningful way, because even the people I have met, who I was intrigued with and had good exchanges with, there came the point where I had to hand them the receipt and tell them to have a good day. It's just so, even the part that was meaningful has now become meaningless. And it's actually a week from now that I'm going to be turning in my 2 weeks notice, as a matter of fact. I was on Peachtree Street, and I crossed over. I think this is West Peachtree Street, I believe. And it seemed like a good point to make a new clip. It's already been 14 minutes, and I know that in the editing process, if I were to see a huge clip that's like 45 minutes long, I'd be searching for some point where there was a natural conclusion that I could cut and have there be a break in the clip so that I could, I guess, transition to something else for a minute, give the listener a break. But I decided not to have to go that route and just going ahead and be proactive about it, make a new clip. I haven't seen any of my friends, people who I used to hang out with a lot for a very long time now. Jake, Alex, Noah, Steven, most of those guys that used to be sort of the core group that I was with, my go-to guys. I've separated myself from them. I wouldn't say it's necessarily permanent, but it's definitely intentional and forceful, and it's been consistent. I kind of just got really fed up with their attitude in general. Just very, very lazy, very, very defeatist in a way. Not healthy for themselves, and definitely not healthy in terms of who I surround myself with in this time of my life. And so in moments like this, where people perhaps maybe would go to friends to spend time with them so they could unclutter their minds and sort of, in a sense, I guess, move on from whatever's been occupying their thoughts, I have forcibly removed that option from myself, which I think goes to an even greater. Hold on. These people stealing my attention. This is much easier to do in Japan, I think. One, because no one understood me, and two, it's kind of used to being stared at. And now that I'm here, back in America, walking around with a recorder, it feels different. It feels much more naked and exposed. But anyway, talking back about my friends and stuff, having that no longer be an option for what I'm doing to spend my time. I also met with Brittany yesterday, which I think might be the sole reason why this feeling of being slightly askew is present. Let's see.
Can you just say wait?
I'm actually on Allen Iverson Jr. or something street, which is going to take me up to Marietta Street, which I'll take a ride onto and walk over to Octane. And then my plan is to, from there, walk to Amon Perk, and I guess from there walk home. It's sort of a strategic walk so that I can be in a good part of town walking home when it's dark, not have to worry about any kind of sludge or anything like that. I'm not really sure if I'll stop anywhere to get anything to drink. I'm not really interested in that. I feel like I need to walk and talk and think and sweat and just exercise myself with an O. Exorcise. So anyway, as I was saying, I met Brittany yesterday, and this is the first time meeting with her that has actually been a wholly, from start to end, pleasant experience, which I didn't expect. I was definitely surprised by. Every time we've talked or met or written back and forth, there's an inevitable, jaywalking, gonna get killed. There's always an inevitable part of the conversation that deals with our being separated and how she wants to get back together and how I don't. But this time that wasn't talked about, and it was just much more comfortable and an enjoyable experience. I went over to her house to fix her bike. Oh shit, I guess I won't be going on this light. went over to fix her bike and I guess give it a tune-up. And we just talked while I did that. I checked over her whole bike, cleaned her chain a little bit, and got to see her new house, see who she's living with, things like that. I had to write about it today because it was just such an eerie type of familiarity, a nebulous ghost kind of familiarity, a comfort that was a little bit too comfortable. It just seemed like it would be so easy to fall back into old habits and stuff. And I really didn't want to do that, even though it felt like it would be a very easy and natural thing to do. I had talked to this guy who I work with named Hassani the day before I went to go and tune up Brittany's bike. And I told him that my ex-girlfriend wanted me to go fix her bike. And he immediately said, he was like, she wants to screw. And whether or not that's true, I don't know. I don't know if that's the sole reason. But, you know, being in her bedroom for like a long period of time and fixing her bike and just talking like we used to and being that close, it was very strange, familiar, yet so different. And I think that's kind of what has left me feeling strange today, because it was like being in a relationship again, just talking in a similar kind of way. And so a lot of my day today was spent in between checking people out at Whole Foods, writing down what the experience was like. And I didn't get to write much, obviously, being at work. Not the most conducive to writing. Although I have spent a lot of time at Whole Foods writing while I've been at the register. They have given us these little memo pads that we're supposed to use to keep track of like product codes and things like that. But I've used it largely just to write a bunch of things that I've been thinking about. I remember I wrote several pages about why I wanted to join the Peace Corps, why it seemed like the right idea for me, and just wanted to see my rationale on paper. And that's always a big step for me, kind of having a general idea about something and feeling like it's a very developed idea, but then deciding to put it down on paper in some kind of a physical representation so that you can actually see what you've been thinking, to me is always very important to do. And so during the beginning process of my Peace Corps pursuit, I wrote that segment, or wrote those pages about why I wanted to go. And then there's actually a couple other meetings and stuff that I've had with Brittany that I've written about in that book as well. And this has kind of been something that I've experienced several times now as well. Every time having met with Brittany, usually it's a lot more of a negative thing because, like I said, the meetings with her usually end kind of sour. But that makes this one even the more strange, since it ended not so poorly. It was just strange. To her credit, I would say she seemed different, at least compared to the last time we had talked. So that's part of the reason, I'm sure, that has led to me walking now as I am. And I'm just now passing the World of Coke, and I'm really close to the Georgia Aquarium. And it looks like in Centennial Park they're setting up for some sort of a concert event, but I don't know what that's about. Kind of walking outside of the city now. It's getting more and more quiet, which is nice. I can hear myself. It's amazing. Atlanta is such a disgusting and dirty city compared to Japan. Just my propensity to look down, really opens me up to how much garbage there is everywhere. And there's really a lot, and it's definitely everywhere. And it's really unfortunate pretty sad. Definitely not an aspect of America that I missed when I was in Japan. Because I certainly try to be as conscientious about what I'm doing to the environment as I can in the aspects that I have become aware of. You know, I'm not by any means a warrior or anything for the environment, fighting on its behalf or anything. But I don't litter, you know. I'm very conservative with my my trash and my garbage, with the resources that I use. I don't use plastic cups or napkins or things like that. I guess I'm a very sustainable person at this stage in my life. And just looking around, it's just weird to see the kind of waste culture and consumer culture we live in. People consume all these things and then just throw them away. There's just no accountability. There's no pride, and there's no stock taken, I guess, in the environment itself. And in a city like Atlanta, that's evident. And hopefully, forecasting these types of things on the rest of the country is not a correct thing to do. I hope that there are more enlightened civilizations within the United States where people don't do this, and I've heard tale of such. Recently at Whole Foods, I had a customer, one that I enjoyed. She had just gotten back from Maine, and she was telling me just how different Maine is from Atlanta. And Maine's a pretty obscure state to me. I don't know much about it, if anything, except for geography. And so she was telling me that it was amazing to go to Maine and then come back to Georgia, Atlanta, and just notice how much of a commerce-oriented and driven city Atlanta is compared to Maine. She said that everyone was, you know, focused on being green and focused on being sustainable, having a low impact on the environment, living, you know, symbiotically, harmoniously with your surroundings, rather than dominating them with a chokehold, you know, having a mutual ownership and stewardship over the land that both humans and nature occupy. So that's interesting, something to keep in mind for the future as I move forward and have to decide where I'm going to be defining my life and how I'm going to be doing that. That's another thing I wrote about today, how strange it is that someone like Brittany, you know, she is beginning her life now in earnest, and I still have probably another 3 or so years before I really feel like I'm going to be setting down any real roots. But she's basically where she wants to be at this point, which, looking at where that is, I'm pretty sure that that's another huge dividing point between the two of us, because I just don't think I could, especially now, join in on that, because it's just, she's going to be here for the foreseeable future. I don't know if that's something I would want to commit to. She's in a career line now that's it's stable in a way, but the stability perhaps is its irregularity. It's stably irregular. And I just don't know. I feel like I would just be an ornament in her life. And this is me being hypothetical, because this isn't anything that I want to pursue anyway. But if I were to be with Brittany at this point, I would feel ornamental. Just something that's there when she wants it to be there, because it's pretty and she likes the way it makes her feel. Because she's pursuing filming, and it just seems like that's her big priority. And to me, I'm not ready to commit to anything so focusedly and cut off the rest, which may be an unfair thing to say. I feel like it's preserving potential, but maybe it's really just delaying and denying direction, something like that. I'm getting fairly close to Octane now. I'm on the part of Marietta Street that is, in my mind, distinctly the road to Octane. You know, when you're in Atlanta, the scenery that paints the streets, you know, the things that abut the street, the buildings, the monuments, the landmarks, they can change drastically from intersection to intersection. And now, the area that I'm at, the landscape remains pretty constant from this point on. And so to me, I'm at a section now that definitely signifies that I'm getting close. And since I'm getting close already, and I really don't feel the strain or the exertion that I'm hoping to gain from this walk, I definitely don't have any plans of stopping there. I think I'll walk from this point towards Inman Perk, towards the Cabbagetown, Old Fourth Ward kind of area. The only question is, how do I want to go there? So if I think about it, I'm walking on Marietta Street. If I go straight past Octane, veering to the right where Marietta splits to West Marietta and Marietta, that'll take me to Howe Mill, which takes me to 17th Street, which takes me then to Atlantic Station, which is actually where Erica Yokes, shout out to the Yokes Meister, that's where she is right now. And if I were to do that route going by Atlantic Station on 17th would lead me back the direction I came. I'd like to go there on a road that's not very loud. It's not very cluttered with people or garbage. And so the options I have, I feel, are limited. Peachtree is definitely not going to work. There are several streets behind Peachtree that parallel it that I could take, which would probably provide what I want. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. I think I'll continue on Marietta Street, take a right onto 17th Street, walk through Atlantic Station, cross over Peachtree, and then walk parallel in the neighborhoods that are behind, or not behind, but parallel to Peachtree, and follow that somehow through a bunch of curves and things to get to the Old Fourth Ward area. My mom is in Indiana right now. She called me before I left, but I was, I guess, in the process of getting ready to leave myself, so I didn't actually get to take her call, but I definitely intend on calling her back sometime during this walk. And she's down there, well, up there, visiting her family. I don't think she's seen them for, close to a year probably now, maybe 6 months. I think they might have gone there to Indiana for Christmas. But her mother's sort of having a crisis. Recently broke up with her boyfriend. Her dog passed away. She's kind of in dire straits with money. And she's pretty old, in her mid-70s, with fairly diminished health. And she's kind of a hypochondriac, which doesn't help that. And so my mom went to go and spend time with my grandmother, Grandma Iggy. And I admire her a lot for doing that, because my mom's relationship with my grandma isn't necessarily the best. My mom has very oftentimes talked about how my grandma will forget my mom's birthday and not send her any sort of cards or gifts, not even give her a phone call, just completely forget. I know my mom has a lot of mixed feelings of guilt and, duty to her family for having left Indiana years ago when she moved to Florida, which was sort of talked about again in some of the old episodes from Washington, D.C., when I was trying to figure out more about my parents. And so my mom's down, I keep saying down, she's in Indiana because she wants to spend some time with her mom and help her through these times that are difficult for her. And my dad didn't go with her because he said he was busy, and it's kind of a mess of feelings that I have about that. But suffice it to say, my mom went down with my dad every time they went to Florida while Mame, my dad's mother, was sick and slowly succumbing to illness that eventually did take her life. My mom went with him every time. My dad, now given the opportunity to reciprocate that same showing of affection and love and respect and concern, has elected to not do the same. He said he was busy. I think that that's probably an overstatement. I'm sure he's busy, but no more busy, I'm sure, than my mom was, taking all those weekends off as she did. But before I start getting into things that are tantamount closely related to gossip, I think I'll just change the subject, something else. As I said earlier, I kind of feel like I'm in between interests right now. I was really interested in cosmology and astrophysics, quantum theory, but I feel like I've exhausted all of the resources that I had to further investigate that, and everything has started to become redundant and sort of repetitive. I can't find any new lectures or documentaries or specials that delve any deeper into the things that I was interested in. So I've sort of taken a break from that, and in the meantime, between those interests, I started getting interested. God, this train. I'm walking next to a train right now, so if you're curious, that's the noise. I think I just found a bullet casing. Yep, it is indeed. Keep that as a little memento for this walk. A bullet. Weird. And so it's fairly soon after falling out of favor with physics and all, I got interested in mycology and mushrooms and that sort of a thing, mainly through watching talks and lectures given by a man named Paul Stamets, and he has all these really cool well, let me rephrase that now that the train is past and I'm a little bit more clear-headed. He's done a lot of work with mushrooms, both in a medicinal format and in a psychoactive format. Come to find that they have a lot of unique anti-cancer, antibacterial, antiviral properties that are unmatched by other alternative forms of drugs for treating things from herpes to HIV to cancer. A bunch of really, really interesting findings he has that are really, really unique. Interesting. I think I'm at a point right now that I've never realized. I'm walking over a bridge right now, and I have many, many times gone over this bridge and many, many times gone under this bridge. But never have I realized that it is the cross-section of two areas that I know very well. Below the bridge, I believe, is North Avenue, as it makes its way to Northside Drive, which in my mental map, if I were to follow this, it does indeed. And now above the bridge, still on Marietta Street, going towards Octane, I'm able to finally put these pieces together. Very interesting. There's a lot to be said. I know this is a tangent, but it's a tangent birthed through experiential immediacy. So there's a lot to be said about the modes of, locomotion and travel that you can do, and the degree to which you can observe your surroundings when you undertake them. I think you could represent it mathematically in a way that the faster you travel, so the greater the value of S, the less you see. It's an inverse square kind of law. The faster your rate of travel, the lower your output, your input, really. Because I don't know if I've ever actually walked up here before, but I'm definitely seeing things that I've never seen before. And that applies both to the landscape itself and the people. I'd usually be blown by these people on my bike as fast as my legs can carry. How's it going? So anyway, it's back to what we were talking about. Sort of in between, and mycology doesn't have much, I guess, in the way of any kind of huge following. So aside from Paul Stamets, I haven't really been able to find very many people who have, done seminars or lectures, or definitely haven't found any kind of documentary solely about mushrooms. But again, I don't know. It's a much, I can feel that it's a much weaker interest in the spectrum of things, just because, I don't know, it's already starting to wane, and I've only had it for maybe 4 days or so. 4 days? Is that even right? Maybe 4 days. That's probably correct. That's probably not too few. It feels like too few. We'll soon be passing by the restaurant, which was where Brittany and I had our last date before we broke up. It's a Thai restaurant. Don't really remember the name. It's called Spoon, I think. And it was a good, fun date. I enjoyed that. Even though there was a lot of issues hanging in the air when we were there, still managed to have a good time. It was different. Even then, everything was different. Having come back from Japan and just being immersed again in the culture that was familiar but not, doing things that I had been doing, like drinking a beer and eating good food. It's weird. It's gonna be weird to walk by. This area is definitely heavy laden with memories. Weird memories, not necessarily congruous to each other. Not really from the same time frame, necessarily. I used to come here this direction, maybe, I guess my junior year. What was my junior year? Strangely enough, it's hard to believe that was my junior year. My junior year felt like my sophomore year. It's weird. Freshman year, I lived in the dorms. That was quite a year. Got a pretty solid group of friends, first girlfriend, first experience of drugs and alcohol, sex. Then that all kind of fell apart. I moved back home. Brittany moved to Portland. My dad lost his job. I lived at home for a year, commuted back and forth to school every day. I'd explore somewhat while I was in Atlanta during my school days, but I came to understand why people wanted to kind of leave immediately when they were done with their work. I remember that was the last time in my life that I really enjoyed reading. I would go to Danneman's and drink a lot of coffee and then just read. I read more books that year probably than I ever have in 1 year before or since. Just haven't really been in the mood to read since. I feel so preoccupied with other things. Reading is so slow and so demanding of time, which I know over time that becomes less and less true. I'm going to cross the road, try to get to the sun, but also get away from these feijots that are dead reckoning for me. Wow, some huge mushrooms. Good Lord. It's interesting now to see all the mushrooms that have grown since the rains have come in Atlanta. Recently it's been raining a lot, nearly every day, which is pretty rare. If this has to be a seasonal thing or a fluke, one or the other, I'm not sure. But it's been raining like crazy, and it's in good timing with me being slightly interested in mushrooms because mushrooms grow so quickly. And there's such a diversity of species in the mushroom, the fungi kingdom. There's no lack of variety. I can see if I go for a walk like this, looking out onto any area that's covered in grass or mulch, there's a good chance I'll see some sort of fungus. And odds are it'll be a type that I've never seen before. Anyway, sophomore year, lots of reading. Then I moved back. Yeah. Are you waiting for Marta? Yeah. To be honest, I don't know. But I wish you sincere good luck, because this is an awful bus company. It's pretty bad, yeah. It doesn't run on time. But, I mean, it's not too late. I wouldn't think it would have stopped already.
You ever see it though?
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah. How long have you been there? Man. Yeah, I don't know. Is that... Well, good luck. Yeah. Another difference between Japan and America. Well, Atlanta anyway. I think that MARTA is one of the only privately owned public transportation systems in the United States. And that definitely works against it. I must say, severely works against it. MARTA is one of the poorest quality systems that there has to be in the United States. And I don't think it's that way on purpose. I don't think that they're negligent or derelict with what they're supposed to be doing. I think it just comes down to the fact that people just don't use it enough for it to have the available revenue and profit to be able to really be, a decent company. They can't afford to incentivize their drivers and their customers to get them on anything like a real and stable timetable. But, that doesn't really bother me. I've tried my hand at riding MARTA before just to see what it was like, and it was awful. The bus was awful. It was hard to understand. Honestly, and this isn't me being exaggeratory or anything, it was easier to understand the bus schedule in Japan in Japanese than it was for me the first time I tried to ride the bus when I came back from Japan here in Atlanta. I remember I was trying to take my bike to Performance Bikes to get it serviced because it had just come back from Japan and hadn't been serviced at all while I was out there. And I was trying to take the bus back to my apartment, and I could not make heads or tails of what I was supposed to do. It did not make any sense. And I was reading a sign in plain English, but I just couldn't get a grasp on it. Didn't understand. So that poor girl back there that I was yelling back and forth across the street to, who knows how long she'll have to stand there before she gets picked up, taken where she needs and wants to go. I can only wish her luck. Closing in ever closer to Octane. I'd say it's going to be invisible sight, which perhaps that's a redundant statement, but I'm going to be able to see it in the next, 10 minutes. Less than that, as soon as I go around the bend of where I'm walking now. But I was talking about college, kind of reviewing the years that have passed. It was kind of interesting to me to rethink. My sophomore year really did just feel like freshman year with a lowercase a, as if you were making some sort of a graph or a timeline. You have like the first point, number 1, big numeral 1, freshman year. Then below it, indented 5 spaces. With a hanging indentation, it would say A, lowercase a, and then it would have what was actually my sophomore year, but really just felt like an extension. Anyway, it's weird. I lived for a year back in Lilburn, and then moved back to the city, moved into the Sampson Street lofts, into a small room in a big apartment with some people I didn't know, which was cool. I enjoyed that. It was interesting company, and definitely an experience I wouldn't have had if I had done anything else, obviously. And by that time, Brittany had moved back, and let's see, red light, so I should be safe. Brittany had moved back. She was at Barry. I was back in the city at State. I'd see her maybe at least once, definitely at the very least, once every 2 weeks, but usually more like once a week on the weekends or so. She tended to come back. We would hang out a lot in Atlanta, do things. A lot of hanging out at my apartment, my little room, trying to watch movies and not fall asleep, etc. Making a lot of food, making a lot of love, drinking a lot of beer and wine, things like that. And, now I know why it seems so long. Because I went to Japan, of course. Going to Japan was 6 months after having moved back to the city. And now it's been a year almost. Wow. I was thinking that it seemed like I had been in school much longer than I have, and that's because I've almost been in school for a year that was unaccounted for. Man, what a weird college career I've had. This time definitely included. Man, it's weird. So strange. So I really haven't had I guess this will be my senior year. Which makes sense, because I'm graduating in a year. It's so weird though. Came back from Japan in February. Broke up with Brittany really soon after that. I smoked pot for about a month and a half after we broke up. Not like a lot, but daily I would smoke a very small amount, and I would go through a gram in a month's time, which anyone who knows anything about weed should definitely know that is a very long time to be mooching off a gram. But I would just smoke enough to feel it, and then I would go for a bike ride, because it would really open up the possibilities of where I could go on a bike ride when I was just ever so slightly stoned. A new road that I'd passed a million times without going down would look intriguing, and I would have to take a side trek and see what was down that way. There's a little dog in the way in front of me. And I grew out of that phase pretty quickly, realizing that it was sort of a dead end, and had just kind of been a bridge from one phase of life to the next as I started to get more and more interested in the idea of joining the Peace Corps after I graduate. And as soon as I started pursuing that, I stopped smoking so I could keep a clear mind about things and make sure that everything I was doing was being done with sober intentions and not with the clouded judgment of something that might be partially or wholly induced by a substance that, when taken out of my consciousness, might yield different results. which has been always something scary to me about substances in general. Very dangerous. If you come to a realization while on a substance and are no longer able to feel or hold on to that realization when you've returned to sobriety, then was it really a realization? To me, a realization is only as good and far, but a realization is only as good as you can carry it. It doesn't really matter if you realize that love is better than loneliness and apathy while you're drunk, because it's easy to do things differently when you're in an altered state of mind, and harder still to do things differently when you're in your right mind, in your sober mind, the mind that you were born with and have the responsibility to carry with you for the remainder of your days, should you live them in a state of sobriety, or at least semi-sobriety. I drink a lot of coffee. Drink a lot of coffee, and that, by no stretch of the imagination, is a drug, but the effects that it has on consciousness are not so drastic and, altering that it would be something that I would need to consider taking out of my daily life in order to gain a more rounded and even balanced perspective. It's sort of just an addition to what's already there. It ramps up my faculties rather than adding faculties that otherwise don't exist. So that's why I stopped doing that, and now I've been pursuing the Peace Corps. In my time, my extended summer vacation, I've been quite productive, quite busy, quite contemplative, quite interested in a variety of fields of things. Been living in an apartment with 3 girls, 3 Asian girls. This has been fun and certainly different. Definitely have a high amount of faith for my ability to get along with most types of people. And this situation with Julia, Erica, and Nolen is definitely no different. In this coming year of school, I'm really excited to be given another 365 days to explore academia. After the Peace Corps, graduate school is a real possibility, which I was doing some GRE practice questions coincidentally earlier today, and they're pretty easy, the linguistic ones anyway. I didn't see any of the math-related ones, which I don't think they'd be difficult. The kind of math that I think the GRE wants to make sure you're competent in is more logically driven than, difficult. It's, there's nothing, as far as I can tell, intuitive about calculus, especially given the fact that it wasn't even created until, the 1600s. The days of Newton and another man who invented calculus around the same time. The fact that humanity could exist for so long without is a good indication of its necessity. And, necessity is a mother of invention. So, they say that humans have an intuitive grasp on physics because we live in a world where if you throw a ball, it falls. And if you fall, you anticipate hitting the ground. There's a type of physics, basic physics, that is ingrained into the human consciousness just as a consequence of being alive in the world that necessitates the mathematics of physics to be created. Because, the nature of the world that we live in is what inspired the creation of the mathematics that describe it. I'm quite sure that the world would exist much as it does in this instant, even without the physics that describe its motions. In other words, it's just the world isn't dependent on us or our understanding. it would exist in one way or another without us. So that's sort of irrelevant. But anyway, the type of mathematics that the GRE would test for, I think, are more algebraic, geometric, things that are more akin to daily experiences a human has to go through, and the mathematical problems that we may tend to encounter in those days. Dang. Crazy drivers. Retarded drivers. I passed Octane a moment ago and didn't even think about stopping. So the walk continues. And I can feel that these clips will probably be drawing to a close soon. Probably have to move on to something else. Ooh, a needle. Have to move on to something else to occupy my time. So I definitely have to give my mom a call. Maybe my sister. Become a lot more family oriented without having more of a social group, more of a consistent and reliable social group. I've been definitely leaning on my family a little bit more for communication and support in a way, which is another thing I'm excited for at school, just to be surrounded by people, peers. I don't feel like I have very many peers right now. People in the same line of thinking, in the same direction of life, which is something that I want. I want someone who's driven like me, and someone who really wants to do something like me, and someone who doesn't want to just sit around and, talk about something but not do anything like me. Of course, I wonder then, given what I've actually accomplished, if I even fit my own definition. I can only hope that I do, and can only take efforts to make it more and more of a reality, I guess, every day, and hope that the things I do naturally, such as this walk, go towards a greater sense and understanding of who I am and how I fit into my own definition of what a great person, what a decent person, what a good person is supposed to be. Been a little sick lately. Not too bad though. It's on the way out, I think. Getting loud, y'all. Getting real loud. So much garbage. Lots of condoms all over the street. A second ago I saw a needle. Too much garbage. So, where does that leave us? Leaves us here, now, with me still walking. Probably only halfway done. I bet it's got to be 8 o'clock now, at least. 7:55. It's about right, 7:55. So it feels like that. So for the rest of the night, I'll spend a lot of it walking. When I get back, I'll probably drink a lot of water. I'll have to do some push-ups tonight. I have to go to work again tomorrow. And I think my shift tomorrow is 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. I just got a text from Andrew Kendall, which he used to date my sister, and he and I met a couple times to talk about just life and stuff back when I used to live at home in Lilburn during my sophomore year of college. I biked over to his area, and we just met for coffee and just talked about stuff. It all seems so long ago, and he just texted me asking if I'd be available to hang out tomorrow, but I don't think I will be, which I can't say I'm necessarily disappointed about that, because that would be a weird meeting, I think. It's going to be he, my sister, and Caitlin Martin, which she's a girl who I went to prom with several years ago. or homecoming or something like that. I don't really know. It's the only dance I went to. Definitely didn't make me wish I had gone to any others. I'm in a weird part of town now. It's like a up-and-coming yuppie area, kind of being developed from this weird area that it used to be. Looking across the street, watching this young, attractive couple eating yogurt. Wondering if the guy is really interested in what they're talking about, or if he just wants to have sex with her. To be honest, I don't know. Hard to say. Quality conversation's hard to come by, but then who all's looking for it? I don't know. Maybe he is interested in what she's talking about, and maybe men and women really aren't that different from person to person. Perhaps their interests are more similar than our culture would like to admit, and there's just this weird thinking that there is this huge difference in what we find interesting, which I'm sure there is. I know men like action movies and women like The Notebook, but I mean, are they just missing the fact that they both like movies? So those are the questions. Those are the deep questions. That's the kind of thing I want to talk about with somebody else. These underlying things. Talk about culture and society from the perspective of someone looking in rather than immersed by that which is being discussed. See if I can cross the street safely. Getting close to the Atlanta Waterworks, outside of which there's a large sign. It says Atlanta Resurgens, which are those of you like myself who took Latin. You'll know that it means Atlanta rising, like the South will rise type of thing. So noisy. Coming up to a good view of the city. And also I'm crossing a bridge right now. So to my right, a nice view of the city. On the left, it's a nice little bridge spanning the railroad tracks below the bridge I'm walking on now. Sounds like live music. When I hear guitars that sound like they have new guitar strings, I always think that's significant, although it's not that significant. Well, on that note, grasping for straws as I feel I am, I will go now and give my mom a call, see how things are going in Indiana. They probably are done eating dinner by now, so she should be able to talk, and I can speak a little bit more and to do so in a direction that's not so self-created, because speaking like this is great for me when I feel like this, but it's kind of like a sprinkler in the way that the sprinkler has a wide distribution of water. However, it is very well defined. Yeah, I'm not gonna pull out any weird stops while I'm walking and talking and thinking to myself. It's all basically going to follow one linear type of extrusion from my mind. There's nothing that you can get for yourself like talking to other people. Challenge your linear state of mind and thinking. Challenge it a little bit, make it grow. So with that, we'll leave it there. If I start up again with some clips, I'll have to give a timestamp so that you know how much time has elapsed since this last clip and where I've been, where I'm at. So with that, I will talk to you later. Talk to you soon. Take care. Shit.